Good evening and happy Wednesday, friends and family of Grace Lutheran Church. Today I want to talk to you about one of our hymns for the second Sunday after Pentecost. And today I am going to talk to you about our opening hymn. I've already done a video on the hymn of the day, and this one kind of has an interesting backstory, so I thought it would be good to share it with you. So our opening hymn for the second Sunday after Pentecost is Rise, Shine, You People. It's number 825 in the Lutheran Service Book. So I said that this hymn has kind of an interesting backstory. This hymn was written during a time when a new hymnal was being written. So the Inter-Lutheran Commission on Worship was working on what would eventually be the Lutheran Book of Worship, or if you're like most Lutherans, the Green Hymnal, right? Referring to different hymns by their colors rather than their actual names. And this hymn was being compiled, and the Augsburg Publishing House, one of the publishing entities involved with the book, put out a challenge of sorts to encourage people to craft new hymns. So through a 2-year series, a Hymn of the Month series that lasted from 1973 to 1975, the Augsburg Publishing House encouraged poets, the best and the brightest of our church bodies, to write new hymn texts to go with existing hymn tunes. And we see this all the time in our hymnal where different texts are used with the same tune. It's very common. So we're asked for these brand new texts. Then later, composers were asked to compose new tunes to go with those brand new texts. So when everything is said and done, you end up with a completely new hymn, something that no one's ever heard before, new text, new tune. And this hymn is one of those results from that endeavor by the Augsburg Publishing House. This hymn was written, the text, by Ronald Klug. You can see that at the bottom of your page there. Klug worked at Augsburg Publishing House, and he wrote this hymn to be used on Epiphany. And the title might give you kind of Epiphany feelings, right? Rise, shine, you people. Whenever we're talking about light and shining, we kind of get the idea of Epiphany. But also, that first line sounds super similar to the first line of one of our Epiphany readings from Isaiah chapter 60. And that passage, Isaiah 60, begins with the words, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you." So very similar to that very first line of our hymn here. So this hymn was written for Epiphany. You'll notice, however, if you look in our newer hymnal, the Lutheran Service Book, that it is not in the Epiphany section of the hymnal. We find it in Mission and Witness. You can always find that category up at the top of your hymn page. So it's in the Mission and Witness section of our hymnal, and it is indeed very appropriate for any Sunday in which we are talking about the mission of the church. For instance, this Sunday, the second Sunday after Pentecost. The gospel reading for this Sunday is from Matthew chapters 9 and 10, and that passage contains a few words that are probably going to sound very missional to you guys. So it contains these words from Jesus to begin with in chapter 9. "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." And that sounds right, again, like a mission, right? To send out laborers into the harvest field. And Jesus tells his disciples to pray that God would do that thing. Something that I really like about this passage is that Jesus simultaneously tells the disciples to pray for workers to go out into the harvest field. But then if you look a little bit further down the passage, he tells them, he says to them, "Now you go out, go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and proclaim as you go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons," and so on, right? So Jesus first says, pray that the Lord would send laborers into his harvest, and then later to the exact same group of disciples, he says, okay, now you guys go out. So Jesus' message for us is also the same. We are to pray that God would send people out into his harvest fields, that he would send people to be pastors and missionaries and to do jobs in the church. But Jesus also calls each of us to go out and be those missionaries, be those harvest workers as well. And that is what our hymn is talking about for this week, our opening hymn, which makes it a really good thing to kind of prepare us to go into worship. Our hymn starts out first talking about the fact that Christ has come, the kingdom of heaven has come, right? The kingdom of heaven is at hand, and that he has come, he has provided forgiveness and freedom and life for all who believe in him. And we celebrate that. And that's what happens in like our first 3 verses. We talk about the great things Christ has done, we celebrate it. But this hymn doesn't leave us at celebration. It takes us into the next step. It's not good that we should celebrate alone in this. Christ desires that all people come to a knowledge of the truth and are saved and know the good news about him. So we don't stop at celebration either. We go out and get more people to celebrate with us. The last verse and a half of our hymn say that we are to go out and tell the story of Jesus' glory, to tell how the Father sent his Son to save us, to tell of the Son who life and freedom gave us, and to tell how the Spirit calls from every nation his new creation, to share that good news of the work of the Trinity, to connect it back to last week's lesson on the Holy Trinity. So a really great hymn to go along with a really wonderful text for this week. And just a little bonus information here. The tune that was written for this text is kind of interesting. It's a different tune, but we are also using it for the service of morning prayer for the festival of St. Barnabas, which Pastor and I filmed this morning, a morning prayer service, and it will go up on Thursday. So you can also check out our St. Barnabas the Apostle service and get a preview of this interesting hymn tune as well. So there you go. That's everything you need to know. I can't wait to see you guys in church and to celebrate with you, and then encourage you as you go out to also work in that harvest field. So we will see you soon. Thank you.